So delighted to be joined by Brian Barry to preview this weekend's football games. Right, before we look at this weekend's games, there was a bit of drama last weekend with, especially the Munster Championship. I think with the two games going to extra time. What have you made of the championship so far in football?
Well, I suppose the big eye-catching thing is that Kerry are gone and Monaghan are gone, which would suggest both games were played in bad conditions, albeit the pitch in Páirc Uí Chaoimh is very good. But it suggests, first of all, that the weather is a great leveller this winter football, even though a lot of people were talking up Monaghan, saying that they've kind of delivered and performed in the league the last few years. That actually might suit them. That's the time of year when they've got some of their biggest results. They've beaten Dublin a few times. They've beaten pretty much every top team in the country over the last few years in the league, but didn't happen for them. Mainly just game management was the real issue for Monaghan. They had the game won at halftime. They were home and hosed, and they couldn't see it out in the manner of that. If that's a Mayo, or if that's a Dublin, or if that's a Donegal or somebody, they completely wind down the clock. They shut the game down. But to be honest, they just tried to play keep ball, and they didn't look like they had any plan after keeping possession, and it caught them badly. Having said that, they missed a few chances. Conor McManus had a free to win it just before full time, and there were a few bits, but no, they got badly caught out, to be honest. And the draw was opening up for them as well. We see this weekend, like Cavan against Down, one of those teams is going to be in an Ulster final. Monaghan were probably eyeing that from the start of the year, thinking, we've a clear path now to an Ulster final, given that we're on the opposite side of the draw to arguably probably the next three strongest teams in Ulster, Donegal, Tyrone and Armagh. So that's them gone for the year. Kerry obviously is the big talking point. What can you say? Probably that hasn't already been said, but they got Cork were coming the last few years, coming strong. Everything went right for Cork, but at the end of the day, it was a nightmare for Kerry. Like, Cork probably needed everything to go right for them, and then Kerry not to take their chances. And you saw Sean O'Shea and David Clifford kicking wides and kicking frees and shots short that they'll never miss again. So it didn't work out for Kerry again, and then they put themselves in the position to get caught in the hop by a late goal. So again, gone. I think the major result of that, in terms of a Sam Maguire picture, is that this weekend it sets up Mayo against Galway nicely. No disrespect to, I suppose, Tipperary and Cork, but a Munster title would represent big progress for those two teams, whereas Mayo and Galway are probably thinking the bigger picture that bit more, thinking, okay, win this weekend and we have a real chance of getting to an All-Ireland final, whereas beforehand their mindset might have been a bit different when Kerry were hanging around likely as an All-Ireland semi-final opponent. So first 2 weeks down, we're 19 teams gone, 12 remaining, so it's nicely set up.
Yeah, because you make a great point about the Connacht Final this weekend. It does open it up completely, and it is no disrespect to Cork. And the Cork probably fancy if they do get over to Tipperary, they'll probably fancy their chances against Galway or Mayo anyways, that they knocked out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like Cork, even though they turned a big corner. Everybody's saying like this year, okay, perhaps it was promotion. It was almost they flicked a switch at the end of the National League last year. They came out completely rejuvenated against Limerick in a Munster semi-final. It was down at it in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. Like there was a bit of talk. They apparently played Dublin in a challenge game and beat them that year in 2019 in the lead up to the championship, and everything just started to go right for them. They absolutely put Limerick to the sword that day when there was talk of Limerick kind of coming down and fancying themselves off the back of a win over Tipperary. They acquitted themselves well then in the Munster final against Kerry, and certainly didn't embarrass themselves in the Super 8s either. So listen, Cork are a Division 1 county. Won an All-Ireland under 20 title last year. They've got as competitive and as strong a club championship standard as any county across the board. They've got the players, they were seriously underperforming the last few years. So they're by no means, they're no minnows. I'm not saying it wasn't an upset last Sunday, but that's where they should be. They're certainly a top 8 county and should be up there more consistently now at this stage. So again, if they get over Tipperary, and there's a big if, seen this morning Colin O'Riordan is available for Tip, but they'll certainly see themselves as the team. It's there for them now to get to an All-Ireland semi-final, or All-Ireland final, I should say, as well. So as I say, they are in bonus territory, but that's not how they'll see it themselves.
Yeah, so we'll move on then to the big one this weekend is the Connacht Final on Sundays. Galway and Mayo, and sort of contrasting form, if you like, for both counties. Mayo played 4 weekends in a row now, impressive win over Scotland on Sunday, whereas Galway didn't even get a game at the weekend. Sligo had to pull out, and obviously Mayo hammered them in the league. So it's interesting. Probably a lot of people are swaying with Mayo, but Galway can't be underestimated at all. It's kind of the form thing with Galway. We don't know where they're at the moment.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about that. Will that impact Galway? I think given the fact that the two National League games were in such close proximity to the championship, I don't think it's a massive factor in terms of, okay, here, look, they got the dirty petrol out of the engine in Tuam that day when they got hammered by Mayo, but they kicked on from that. They looked to have put that behind them. We made a lot of changes, Padraig Joyce, for the game against Dublin, and they kind of held their own against Dublin, went down by a few points. Okay, Dublin tagged on a goal, but they led for 3/4 of that game. So they're probably coming in quite a decent position. The one thing is Damien Comer is a massive loss. No getting around that fact. He's their main man. If you can get at Mayo, perhaps it's the full back line in terms of a lack of height, especially with the new mark rule coming in. Comer as an inside forward there, especially the way they were playing earlier in the league today. They absolutely carved Tyrone open. Like, Comer looked central to everything that Padraig Joyce had set up to do. They were almost playing Shane Walsh further out the field, and just they were getting that. Ronan Steed as well was kind of crucial in the middle third and the transitional ball, but it seemed to all be kind of centred around getting ball into, I suppose, quick ball into Comer, and he's a man who can do damage. So there's no getting around that, how big a loss he is. But having said that, and it is a big if they get over Mayo, that the fact that they got that bye against Sligo mightn't work out too badly, because you're heading into the All-Ireland series probably facing teams who were out 4 or 5 weeks in succession like that. The fact that they had a few weeks off, it's a sprint, not a marathon this year, this championship, and any bit of, I suppose, chance to rest up at any point probably isn't a bad thing. But having said that, you can't look away from Mayo's form. They got relegated, but I don't think that was a disaster at all in terms of they're not a team who are going to find themselves down Division 2 and struggle to get out of it. They're not like Cork, who might be heading into a few years of a rut. Mayo, the fact that they're down Division 2 next year isn't going to impact them at all. So on the basis of the 4 games so far we've seen the last few weekends, hammered Galway, acquitted themselves well in a shootout against Tyrone. It was no disaster. They went down by a point in a very good game against top-tier opposition. And then they did what they needed to do. I didn't see much of the game against Leitrim, Bear the Sunday game highlights, but they did what they needed to do in what was apparently terrible conditions. So job done. And then they went out and really put Roscommon to the sword, and they made them look quite ordinary. They're playing with a style, I suppose, that's quite different to some of the other top teams. A lot of the teams are kind of very much possession-based, very much preaching patience, following the lead of Jim Gavin's Dublin the last few years. If it doesn't work out, no sweat, just play it back, and we'll wait for some bit of a break to open. Mayo are creating their own chances. We see that, like Paddy Durkin bursting forward. He scored 2 brilliant points the last weekend, and they're really looking forward, especially it's a statement of intent if they're starting Aidan O'Shea up in the full forward line the whole time. In many ways, if he was playing for a Donegal or Dublin, he'd be out around the middle of the field, and he'd be kind of the one, I suppose, looking to create and looking to punch holes. But he's in there. They're looking to get quick ball into him and then feed off him. And we saw that in Tuam, how Cillian O'Connor played off him and Tommy Conroy played off him the last few weeks as well against Roscommon. So on the basis of evidence, because we haven't seen much evidence from Galway since the restart, bar really one game against Dublin, because it was a flat performance against Mayo. We don't really know where Galway are at right now. We do know where Mayo are at, and Mayo are flying. So it has to be said. So you'd have to tip them going into it on the basis of evidence, but it's still very much like, it's not, you wouldn't be tipping them with any sort of conviction.
Yeah, because even Aidan O'Shea in the full forward line against Roscommon, he didn't do a whole pile, but it was the likes of Cillian O'Connor from open play now is even looking more sharp. You have Tommy Conroy, even Paddy Durkin, the usual suspects driving up the pitch. So they're not one-dimensional at all, and it's good that they can change it up, their style of play up as the game sort of pans out.
Well, that's it. Even if Roscommon obviously went out and said, here, look, we need to shut Aidan O'Shea down, because if we give him even any sort of scraps, he's going to tear us asunder. And perhaps they threw too many resources at quietening down O'Shea, and it created space for those other guys, you know. So even when he's quiet per se, it's not like he's not impacting the game. He's still making a big difference. So yeah, like thus far, it has to be said as well. Just such a turnover compared to the teams that went down to Dublin in the 2016 and 17 finals. You were kind of looking around that team and saying, like, once they lose a few of the, I suppose, elder statesmen, so to speak, the likes of Andy Moore and the likes of Tom Parsons, who were who were central to that team, you would have feared for them. But the guys who've won the under-21 All-Ireland, the teams who are coming in the last few years, like, you see what James Horn has brought in, and they have real depth as well. Like, some of the guys who people were raving about a few weeks ago, somebody like Mark Moran, and he isn't getting back into the team right now. Like, McLaughlin has come in. McLaughlin is another guy. Tommy Conroy has come in. Oisin Mullen, who's been really impressive thus far. They're guys who are actually, you know, making a big impact. Matty Rowan and Conor Loftus out around the middle of the park as well. So these are guys who weren't there during the 2016-2017 runs, but they're certainly back now, and they're mainstays of the team. So even though on paper, if you had told us at the start of the year that Mayo were going to bring in all these guys, you'd say, okay, maybe this year is a bit of a write-off year in terms of All-Ireland ambitions, building for the next few seasons. But they've managed to combine the two, and they're right up there. And certainly the fact that Kerry are gone, as I say, it's open field now, and Mayo will certainly be fancying their chances.
Yeah, because probably 3-4 years ago, you were saying a run against Mayo wouldn't be beneficial, but actually, when you look at the new players coming in, it is benefiting them playing week after week and getting used to each other, and they're building momentum the whole time.
And they're a momentum team. We saw that in the backdoor runs, harping back to 2016 and 17. Okay, they got away with the skin of their teeth some days against Derry, and Cork brought them to extra time there in 2017, and you know, same in 2016, they had a few close shaves, but you know, they're a momentum team, and the hype and the Mayo for some phenomenon, they actually thrive off that. So yeah, perhaps week on week might suit this group.
Yeah, and then from a Galway point of view, obviously, you said, as we know, Damien Comer's out. So you'd have to think there's even more pressure on Shane Walsh to deliver for Galway. He's the other talisman, if you like, and he was probably in the league earlier in the year. Probably you could say even him and Clifford were just the two best players in the country.
Yeah, absolutely. We all know what Shane Walsh is going to do. Perhaps the one problem is what you do with him. There's only one of them. We saw there during the league as well against Dublin, particularly Paul Conroy. They put him in as an inside forward. Obviously, he'd be kind of more traditionally known as a midfielder, and he did a real job that day. Caught a few marks. So it'll be interesting to see how much Galway will target that. I think across the board, I don't think we haven't seen the full effect of the advanced mark or any team actually fully utilising it, but it'll be interesting to see. Keep an eye on Paul Conroy, especially if he goes in. The worries around Galway is the defence. They got torn asunder that day down in Tuam. Sean Andy O'Callaghan was taken to the cleaners by Aidan O'Shea. He was dropped afterwards. It'll be interesting to see whether Padraig Royce will put him back in, or whether it'll go something else. Liam Silk and Owen Karen back there. Like, as we say, like, I think there's more question marks around the Galway defence. They've obviously had a certain Jim McGuinness in with them training. Not too sure how much he did in terms of actually trying to add any bit of solidity. He's not going to, like, the fact is he was only in there for one training session, so it's not like he's going to rebuild the defence or completely restructure the whole thing. But at the same time, it'll be interesting to see whether Padraig Joyce has been in touch with him, or maybe he's offered any ideas in terms of actually how to shore up the defence. Because going forward, we all know what they can do. They have all the firepower. Somebody like Ian Burke, we haven't seen a huge amount of so far this year in terms of just him living up to his potential in that Cara Finn form, or that 2018 form that saw him win Ulster. But they have firepower going forward. They have a forward line that's the envy of any team in the country. So, like, that's not a worry for them in terms of, okay, yeah, Damien Comer is a big loss now getting away from that, but they definitely have players who are game winners and have the potential to do damage to themselves. I think the question marks are just two big question marks around Galway. A, around their defence, and B, well, we don't know where they're at, basically. So in terms of form, in terms of everything, so it'll be interesting to see. one to keep an eye on. So you couldn't, as I say, make any prediction with too much conviction or too much confidence either way here, because Galway are coming in as a relatively unknown quantity.
Yeah, because I was actually speaking to Kevin McStay before the championship started, and he was saying there was a reason why Kevin Walsh set up the way he did, that maybe the Galway defenders aren't as good as people let on, and it's probably trying to get that balance. They tried a bit more defensive against Dublin, it seemed anyways. So again, it's just getting that balance.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Like, you know, sometimes you have to, managers are boxed in as being defensive or being very offensive, or sometimes they're just very pragmatic and they work with it. Like, I'll use a hurling analogy. Derek McGrath was kind of labelled as a very defensive hurling manager for 10 years. I don't think he went actually in to go or to Waterford specifically saying I'm going to be defensive. I just think he said, I think I've 8 or 9 exceptional defensive players, and right now Waterford don't have any forward that'll start on the Tipperary or Kilkenny, so he set up defensively because that's where his strengths lie. Similar with Galway again, so it is an interesting point. I'll bow to the great Kevin McStay's knowledge in terms of how to set up an inter-county team, but absolutely, yeah, it's something to watch about Galway for sure.
Yeah, and then lastly on this, if you had to predict the game, would you just side with Mayo maybe?
I suppose so, on evidence, but here, look, I wouldn't do it with any sort of confidence. So yeah, I kind of, my points up to this point have all been towards giving a politician's answer. I think I'll firmly say in defence, but if you gun to your head, I'd say just Mayo, but it'll be about 55-45.
Yeah, the game on Saturday then is in Open Ulsters, Donegal, Armagh. It's probably similar enough to the Cork Kerry situation. Everyone's expecting Donegal to probably win this maybe by 4 or 5, whatever, but Armagh are an up-and-coming team that just got promoted from Division 2, and they're probably causing problems to Donegal in some ways. You know, their forward line is as good as many around. You know, the 2 O'Neills, Rory Krug and Jamie Clark, Stephen Campbell. You know, top forwards there, but you probably have to imagine Donegal should have enough.
Donegal are certainly favoured. Just on Armagh, first of all, I suppose they came into they're up in Division 1 now. They're up with the big boys, like, you know, having worked their way up from Division 3. So it's been a steady rise the last few seasons under Kieran McGeeney, full value forward. They should have beaten Mayo last year. Let's not forget that. They went down to Castlebar and had them on the ropes for long periods of that game. So they're not too far away at all. They'll be buoyed by that. And I suppose after that game, they probably said, right, for 2020, we're getting into Division 1, so we can actually compete with these teams on a consistent basis. And next time we're up against a top-tier team in the championship, we're not going to make the same mistakes again. So they're here this time. Do they have the tools to trouble Donegal? Possibly so. Like an inside forward line of Rian O'Neill and Jamie Clark are going to cause damage against anybody. They also have big physical players in the middle of the park, like Stephen Sheridan. Grimley came on the last day and against Derry and kind of made a bit of an impact. Stephen Campbell, you mentioned, Jerry Burns, Rory Grugan. Like, these guys are actually big physical players who can compete with Donegal under the kick-out, where that's something that Tyrone really struggled to. Tyrone probably have the backs and they have the forwards now, but they didn't have anything in the middle third in terms of competing with the size of Donegal, because Donegal are monsters, man, you know. And Sean Patton can stick the ball on the two pins from 70-80 yards. We saw a kick out for that goal, so that's something that you really have to stifle. For me, I think Donegal are probably one of 2 teams that on their day can challenge Dublin this year, along with Mayo, probably. Like, the big thing is coming in, like the interesting thing coming in was we saw that league game against Tyrone, and it was Michael Murphy, it was Ryan McHugh, it was Jamie Brennan. Those 3 guys did complete damage. Tyrone said to themselves, we're going to have to shut these guys down if we're going to have any chance in the championship first round, and they did. Michael Murphy was quiet, Jamie Brennan was extremely quiet, and Ryan McHugh, whose influence had completely waned. Even still, Donegal had the match winners all over the park. Kieran Thompson stood up, and who else was it?
Michael Langan.
Yeah, Michael Langan, sorry. And those 2 guys stood up, who wouldn't be, like, if you're choosing your matchups, if you're an opposition manager, those 2 guys aren't like top of your priority list. So it showed that they have options all over the field, and that's something like a Dublin does. You know, like if Paul Mannion has an off day, it's Conor Callan. If Conor Callan has an off day, it's Dean Rock. If Dean Rock has an off day, it's Niall Scully. Whatever, you know. So Donegal have those options now going forward. Add Paddy McBurty into the list, who's probably one of the top 5 forwards in the country, and that's a serious attacking unit. Like, to be honest, the last few years, like, Donegal are close to being the full package. They've a top class goalkeeper who can, like, as I say, his distribution is right up there with the best in the country. They have a strong defence, they have big middle third, and they've forwards who could punish you. Like, what sold them short, I think, the last few years, what really threw them, they came through Ulster very easily, very impressively and convincingly. And 2 years ago, it was the injury to Paddy McBurty that really kind of blew everything off course, so to speak. Last year it was Owen Bon Gallagher. Like, injuries might happen. Obviously, you're going to say, here, look, ideally, from a Donegal point of view, everybody will stay fit, and they're going to be a big threat if everybody stays fit. But argument's sake, if they get a big injury, I think they're better equipped to deal with it now. They're a very young team, but they're probably also they have a balancing act in terms of, okay, these teams are coming at us. These young players are getting stronger and stronger, and they're going to only get better and bring us to the next level. But at the same time, Michael Murphy isn't getting any younger, so we need to probably find the right balance. And there's probably only a 2-year window where, you know, the likes of the younger players like Thompson and Langan and all these lads breaking through are approaching their prime, while Michael Murphy is still at his peak, you know. So at the moment, this year would suggest it's definitely there for them. Armagh, like, as I say, this is no gimme of a match. Certainly it's they're the 2 strongest teams left standing in Ulster. But, like, Donegal will be kind of thinking to themselves, this is a big chance to have a rattle off Dublin now in Croke Park or in All-Ireland semi-final. So you'd have to say Donegal on all evidence, but, like, you'd certainly have a health warning as well, in terms of Armagh are a coming team and will fancy themselves, and they're being written off. I haven't seen anybody talking them up as either. So it certainly comes with a health warning. We've seen Monaghan, we've seen Kerry be notable first round upsets over the first 2 weekends of the championship. Will we get a third big upset this weekend?
Yeah, because it's kind of nearly reminding me of the Mayo Roscommon game from last weekend, that Mayo have been playing Division 1 football now consistently for whatever how many years, and Armagh haven't been playing that, and you can just see the gap. You know, Mayo have been playing big games. Often they got the games against Galway and Tyrone. Could that just go against Armagh, that they're just not quite there in their development yet?
I'd always kind of be cautious enough in terms of pointing to league positioning when talking about championship games. Like, you know, it didn't look like Division 3 football did Cork too much harm this year. Like, Armagh, like, they didn't look like a Division 2 or Division 3 team or anything like that when they had Mayo on the ropes in Castlebar last year. So I don't think it is. I think Armagh have a real chance in this. I think Donegal, if you offer Declan Bonner now a 1-point victory and everybody to come through uninjured, I think he'd absolutely bite your hand off, because Armagh are a big threat in Ulster. They were probably unlucky in terms of they got a more difficult side of the draw, but they're a big threat to Donegal this Saturday. But yeah, gun to your head again, you'd have to fancy Donegal on all available evidence.
Yeah, and then the other side is Cavan down. Obviously, Cavan pulled off that remarkable comeback against Monaghan. Probably unimpressive then against Antrim. Is kind of just, it's hard to know with Cavan. They're one of those teams that can turn us on or turn us off. And maybe Down are probably slight favourites. They've just got more from Division 3 and an impressive win against Fermanagh. Like, how do you see that going?
Yeah, straight out, like, Cavan, Monaghan switched off and Cavan took full advantage. They weren't good against Antrim. They probably went out and thought we've beaten Monaghan now, we've beaten a Division 1 team, we'll steamroll the Division 4 team. Didn't work like that. Like, Armagh were leading at half-time, Antrim were leading at half-time, and they had a real chance. At the start of the year, like, you know, when you saw Moyna leaving and Darren Vitti not in the squad, granted Killian Clark is back in now, you thought, like, Cavan would really struggle, and they got blown away in their first 2 league games. But Now that win over Monaghan, it's offset the blow of relegation, I suppose. And there's a real chance to get to Connacht or an Ulster final for the second year in a row, which, of the basis of their form outside the Ulster Championship, they don't look like a team who get to back-to-back provincial finals. But no, they'll fancy their chances. Like, once the draw opened up for them in terms of once they beat Monaghan, the next three strongest teams in Ulster are on the other side of the draw. We're on the other side of the draw, obviously, in Tyrone, Donegal and Armagh. So they'll fancy their chances. Same for Down. Being honest, I haven't seen a huge amount of Down this year under Paddy Tally, but coming up from Division 3, they hung on Cork's coattails on the table, and they got over the line. Bar Cork, they were the most impressive team, and they were, mind you, they probably did at the last day. They probably got over the line by virtue of Longford's concession of the game against Cork, but at the same time, promotion is promotion. They did enough across the course of the campaign. So came in, they did a job in the quarter final, really kicked on in the second half against Fermanagh. So they're looking strong. We know all about, like, in terms of the firepower and what they can bring up front, So, and they showed that in that second half. So it's 50-50 game, as I say. It's like, I'd say if you're Cavan or Down right now, you're probably praying that, first of all, you get over the line, but also that Armagh do the dirty work on Saturday afternoon and get rid of Donegal out of it. Because if Donegal get to an Ulster final, Donegal are going to win the Ulster Championship, I think. But at the same time, like 10 years ago, Down came from utterly nowhere to get to an All-Ireland final. Like, here, they're not going to get to an All-Ireland final this year, but is it completely outside the realms of possibility that they win an Ulster title? Probably not, if Armagh were to go out and beat Donegal. So both teams are probably thinking that this is a big, big opportunity for them.
Yeah, and then over in Leinster, there's another evenly matched game between Meath and Kildare. Obviously, Meath have just come down from Division 1, and Kildare just missed out on promotion from Division 2. So it's as tight as it gets, really. But Meath put in a serious performance against Wicklow. Like, Wicklow were on an up. Now, everyone expected, Meath to win that probably comfortably enough, but no one expected them to go to Auckland and win by the margin that they did.
Yeah, like, impressive. It was kind of almost not quite a... Here, look, if they went out and won, it was always going to be it's only Wicklow. If they get caught or if they get dragged into a battle, then there's question marks over them. They went out and they really went about their business impressively. Meath are narrowing the gap to Dublin, I think. I'm not saying they're going to beat Dublin or anything, but certainly to narrow the gap in Leinster is a lot narrower. Like, since 2013, there's only been one team to come within 10 points of them in the Leinster Championship for there to be a single-digit margin. So, like, Meath are probably a team, if they play Dublin in the Leinster final, they probably will live with them, certainly. They look like a team who've really benefited from Division 1. We can't always say that. Like, Kildare had their breakthrough year off the back. Okay, they lost all their games in Division 1 in 2018, and they went out and lost Carlow in the first round, but they had that qualifier run and they were perfectly respectable in the Super 8s. But they haven't kicked on from that. Okay, they were unlucky with the draw last year in terms of they lost in Leinster to Dublin, and then they were drawn against Tyrone in the qualifiers, so that was always going to be difficult for them. But just in terms of across the board, the momentum of that 2018 season, having won the under-20 All-Ireland as well, like, they don't look like a team or a county who've really kind of built on that momentum. Big chance for them against Meath. They'll fancy themselves. Like, we all know their score, the forward line. Like, Daniel Flynn is as good a forward out there in Leinster outside of Dublin. Neil Flynn did a job off the bench the last day, obviously in difficult circumstances. Jimmy Hyland coming in, there was a lot of talk of him leading that under-20 team. And Derek Irwin as well, who kicked 6 points the last day. So, like, they have the firepower. Mark Donnellan is a strong, I suppose, goalkeeper and the most important position in the pitch for every team. And, Kevin Feely is as good a midfielder as there is. So they certainly have the, like, as you mentioned there, like, they just missed out on promotion to Division 1. I think that's about right. Like, if you were to look at the rankings across the board, I think they're a mid-table Division 2 team at the moment. I don't think they're anything more until they show us that there was a lot of kind of intrigue about Jack O'Connor going in, and we haven't seen anything out of the ordinary thus far. They've done what they're expected to do, finish mid-table in Division 2, beat Offaly. This is a big chance for them to kick on now. But as I say, just Meath, they're getting a lot closer. they there was. I thought when word came in that Mickey Newman is out for the season, I thought, geez, that's a big blow for them now. But in fairness, they've stood up. They have the firepower. Jordan Morris scored a hat trick the last day. Shane Walsh coming in as, again, having made his debut last year in the Super 8s. He looks like he's really making a bit of progress. They're strong all over the park, except, which is a big problem position for them, is the goalkeeper. Mark Brennan is the man at the moment. I think there was a stat flying around that Andy McEntee had tried, was it 8 or 9 different goalkeepers or something in his years in charge. So that's a worry for them. I was at the Dublin game in Parnell Park a few weeks ago in the National League, where, to their credit, they ran them very close, but it was a gift of a goal to Dean Rock. It was a wayward kick and they straight to Paddy Small. They squared Dean Rock. It's too easy. You're not going to get away with the top level like that. I think Meath are a coming team. I think they'll probably get over Kildare, but they need to sort that out if they are going to narrow the gap any further. But yeah, I fancy Meath to come through it. I fancy them to get into a final and give a good account of themselves against Dublin and run them closer than any team in Leinster has done since 2013. But again, that's not exactly a too high a bar to set. But absolutely, they're a coming team and they look like they benefited from 7 games in Division 1.
Yeah, I just mentioned Dublin there. They're playing Laois in the second game on Sunday. Again, it's a bit like the Westmeath one. Laois can't really expect too much from this game, only to go out and, put in a performance, hopefully maybe for 40 or 50 minutes. And again, it's a tough one on them.
Yeah, absolutely. They went out. Their goal for the season was to stay in Division 2. Since the restart, I suppose, stay in Division 2 and get to Leinster semi-final. They're here now. It's in bonus territory. To be honest, there's no right or wrong way to approach these games. We see sometimes teams trying to park the bus and just lose by 10 points or something, or they try to just go out and have a go and play with a bit of freedom, and sometimes they get carved open and can lose by 20 or 25 points. Dublin are going to win this game handy. I think they're 500 to 1 on with the bookies. There are question marks around Dublin this year. Can they, especially with Desi Farrell coming in, is Jack McCaffrey dug them out of a big hole in the drawn game in the All-Ireland final last year, scored one of the best goals I've ever seen in Croke Park and kicked 3 points in the second half as well. Can they deal with him when the going gets tough and the game is in the melting pot in an All-Ireland semi-final against Donegal or an All-Ireland final against Mayo possibly? That remains to be seen. We're not going to find out those answers this weekend. Straight out, they're going to blow Laois away. And there are question marks over Dublin, but we're not going to find them out until December.
Yeah, because he's trying to introduce maybe a few new players into the team. Of course, it is still early days and it's probably the right time to do it. But 2 forwards, the likes of Paddy Small and Sean Bugler have done well. Do you think they can keep their place in the team as the championship goes on?
Straight out, Paul Mannion was on the bench on Westmeath on the squad for the first time. Whether he's coming back from an injury, we don't know actually. But having said that, he's a guy who's going to come into that team. But Paddy Small has been strong. He was good, put in good performance against Meath and Galway in the league. He performed well again last week. He looked like a guy who was actually playing first place, whereas some of the other players, were a bit more lethargic in terms of they're that bit more assured of their starting spots. So, Paddy Small, he did a job. He was brilliant. We all know about him. He was brilliant in the club run for Ballymun. So he's he's certainly capable of doing a job there. But there's a big player. There's multiple Ulster to come back into that team in the form of Paul Mannion. So in the backs then, he's obviously brought in Cian Murphy, who's been there. Tom Lahiff came in as well the last day. So it's unclear whether these guys are these players that Desi is looking to bring in this year and actually do a job for them in the All-Ireland series, or is a case of he's thrown them in now because it's probably easier to give lads game time in the Leinster Championship game against Westmeath or Laois than it is, say, in a National League game against Donegal or against Mayo or whoever it is in February. So perhaps it's a lower standard or whatever like that. So here, is they're going to go out and win the game handy enough. I don't think and we're not going to read too much into it. The only possible worry is if somebody comes off injured, if a Brian Fenton were to pull up or anything like that, that'd be a big talking point afterwards. But the main takeaway for him is just hoping that nobody goes off injured, and it doesn't matter. They're going to win by 10 points. So it's handy enough.
Yeah, do you think the reason why Dublin have maintained their greatness is because they just keep, and I've noticed that always one or two will go into the team or squad that'll make an impact. Brian Howard one year, Niall Scully, Owen Murch, and these sort of players that they just kept keeping it fresh, if you like.
Oh yeah, it was completely. It's the Brian Cody and Kilkenny blueprint too. Even when they were walking All Ireland, there was always one out and one in. It gives a message to the rest of the squad. If you look at the course of the 5 in a row, Jim Gavin completely transformed the Dublin forward line. You mentioned there Scully, Howard, Conor O'Callaghan coming in, Dennis Bastick, Owen O'Gara, Bernard Brogan, Alan Brogan, all these guys, who were mainstays in around Paul Flynn, who were mainstays in 2015, were completely phased out, and they didn't break stride in terms of that. So, it's still there. The age profile of the backs is probably a small bit more of a worry. Not that Desi has been completely relying on them, but in terms of Johnny Cooper, Mick Fitzsimons, Keane O'Sullivan, these guys are probably, they're all older than any of the starting forwards. So that would suggest that Jim Gavin probably tried to phase a few of them out and couldn't, or perhaps he just stuck with them longer. But if there is going to be, perhaps potential weaknesses, and chinks in the armour appearing, it might be there, I suppose, in the back line over the coming seasons when those guys start retiring. But at the moment, they're still young enough. They're still, as long as they're fit, they're up there with the top players in the country. There's still multiple All-Stars have won them quite recently, and did jobs on some of the best forwards in the country the last few years. So it's full steam ahead. As I say, with Dublin, Jack McCaffrey, I think is the big question mark whether they can cope without him, but we'll find out later in the year.
Yeah, and finally, I suppose with Kerry now gone, you probably see 6 in a row even more likely, because you'd have to think Donegal, Galway or Mayo are going to be the only teams that could stop them now.
Yeah, to be honest, although we saw Galway kind of raising their level, I don't think we've seen enough from Galway to suggest that this year they're going to go toe-to-toe with Dublin in an All-Ireland final and beat them in Croke Park. I think Donegal are the best place to beat Dublin. I think they've certainly got a potential banana skin this weekend. So, and fatigue is probably an issue too in terms of Dublin are going to come through Leinster in second gear. Okay, they might get, they might have to huff and puff to get past Meath in the Leinster final, but they're going to come in relatively fresh, whereas Donegal are coming in off the back of, most likely, they actually had a bit of a battle, first of all, to retain their Division 1 status the first day against Tyrone. Okay, they eased up for that Kerry game, but went out against Tyrone, went out again in terrible conditions, went out against Armagh. And probably, let's be honest, it's going to be a heavier pitch than Dublin are going to be playing in Croke Park this weekend. Donegal are playing in Breffni Park. It's going to be a heavier pitch. Will that take more out of the bodies? Remains to be seen, and then they'll be coming through an Ulster final. That's probably going to be a bit more competitive than a Leinster final, although that remains to be seen. So, Donegal will probably have a bit more mileage in the legs clocked up by the stage if they get to an All-Ireland semi-final against Dublin. But right now, I think from all the evidence, they're the best placed team to challenge Dublin. I think they're one of only 2 teams left in the field I think could conceivably beat Dublin. It's either Mayo or Donegal, but Dublin are the team to beat, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, we'll leave it there. So, Brian, thanks very much for coming on.
No worries at all. Anytime there. We'll chat to you.